Good morning and welcome to the June 30th USDA report. Even though it's not June 30th, it always lives in my mind as the June 30th report. Of course, today's June 28th, a big day, maybe the biggest day of the year when it comes to government reports and the impacts on the markets. Sterling, tell us a little bit about what we're going to look for today in today's report. What are the components that can drive this market?
Well, what we are going to be looking at here, and we're going to go ahead and get a picture up here and share this with you. And what we are getting today is we're getting the acreage number. Now, this is the much more official planted number we had back in March, the prospective planting, which is a guess. This is an actual survey, so this will give us a much clearer picture on what actually got planted. For corn, soybeans, all wheat, and cotton. Also, we will be getting a quarterly stocks report. This will show just how much grain we have on hand, how accurate we've been with ideas about how much crush has gone on for soybeans, how much grain has actually been exported. If we can get some bullish numbers on this, on the stocks number, meaning we see them a little bit smaller than expected, that is something that can definitely help the market out across the board. Particularly, I think if we can get the soybean number to be a little bit lower. The acreage numbers right now, the ideas are we're at about 90 million acres of corn, which was pretty close to the first report, and we're at 86.7 million acres for soybeans. And if we go back here, take a look here for corn, the prospective planting number was 90 million, and then we go on to soybeans, 86.5. So right now, Brooks, the expectation is that we're not going to see any big changes.
Yeah, you mentioned we get better and better at predicting these or guesses. I still have a certain level of, I mentioned this early, anxiety or anxiousness when it comes to these. I can remember where I sat through a lot of these June 30th reports, and Sterling, it generally in the past has introduced a lot of volatility. We've seen market moves limit higher, market moves limit lower. And a couple of times on June 30th reports, we've seen both of them in the same session. Because we do a little bit better job of forecasting these, what do you anticipate today as far as volatility? We've had a big sell-off coming into this. Do you see any reversal or any big surprises that can change things?
Well, let's switch over here and let's take a look at the chart of new crop corn here. As you can see, we have suffered, and we have suffered mightily of late. We've broken down through every area of support. If we are going to see volatility, my inclination is it is most likely to the upside, simply because, one, it's the end of the week. It's the end of the month.
Sometimes it's those other factors, those other variables that we really don't count on in textbook that come into play. Along with that, into the week, into the month, something pretty interesting. Earlier in the week, we were talking about how the spec funds have not contributed to this sell-off in the ways they have in the past. Give us a little idea of what you meant by that.
Well, we've seen there has been some fund selling present, but it has not been as intense. We have seen, more farmers selling coming in, and we can kind of discern this by looking at what time of the day we see trades happen and things, and when the actual volume occurs and what the volume looks like. So the funds have not been coming in here and piling on and driving this thing further into the ground. They are, however, short in a significant way. Now, with it being the end of the week, the end of the month, for some people, maybe the end of the quarter, depending on how their books work, and also in front of a holiday, if I'm a fund and I've been enjoying all this downside action, my inclination is if I don't get something here to really make me want to hang on to this, suddenly I'm holding weather risk at market lows. And that's not so cool. And you've got money made. There may very well be some inclination to come in here and buy this stuff and cover the positions. Along with that, we have another feature. It's June 28th. What's that, Brooks? It's first notice day on that July.
July we talked a little bit about that farmers had to make some tough decisions. So when the flat price is not appealing, farmers more and more go to basis contracts out of the bin. It allows them to get an advance. It doesn't let them set futures. They've still got some upside. This has been a really, really tough decision. They're running low on cash. They certainly don't like the price action. They had to make a decision really over the last 7 days as to whether to price the corn or roll to. Generally, the September is the futures month they roll to. A lot of them have priced, and Sterling alluded to that. Just looking at the time of the day, commercial selling, thus farmer selling, has kind of driven this thing down bit by bit. If you take a look at that chart, you don't see any big free fall days. You just see small bites and a grind lower. So pretty indicative of farmer selling.
Yes. Yes. And
Sterling, you mentioned something too a week ago during the WASDE report that I think we need to talk about. You mentioned this sell off where we're at, and normally we would say we can see 10 days into the future with the forecast. That is going to impact the lion's share of corn pollination in the U.S. This year is a little bit unique in the fact that maybe that primary risk period, because of planting date and things like that, has moved back a little bit. We've also got the sure thing, and that's the Sterling vacation period. But tell us how those things kind of work hand in hand to maybe have delayed this planting or this crop risk season in the U.S.
well, if we go back and we think back, let's think back 12, 15 years ago. You planted your corn first, you planted your soybeans second. That's how you did it. And we had a very uniform corn planting period, which led to a very uniform corn pollination period. That has changed. A lot of guys like to plant their soybeans early now. So that adjusts when you plant the corn. We have varying maturity dates, unlike we had maybe 15 years ago. So now that pollination period, one, due to the weather this year, has probably been pushed back a little bit. And two, due to some different planting habits, we may very well see that pollination period stretch from, let's say, the end of next week, stretching through into maybe the third week of July as much.
Yeah, the old adage, we kind of laughed at it over the last 10 years, knee high by the 4th of July. A lot of the corn's pollinated by that time. We've got a fair amount of acres in the United States that is knee high by the 4th of July this year. And that's about where it's at, even maybe waist high. But corn is a little bit more behind, moving that volatility period back just a little bit on the calendar.
Right. And naturally, there is always, and this happens. It didn't matter if when I was at Bloomberg, at Citibank, wherever. Whenever I leave the desk, something stupid breaks. Something happens. And we could see there is potential for this forecast and the weather to shift noticeably drier and warmer. And we are kind of edging towards that now. I've noticed when they put rain in the forecasts around here, it's not verifying nearly as well. So we have a lot of moisture. And if you look at that first 4 inches, we're really good. You go from that 4 inches down a foot, not so much. And if we don't get those timely rains, that's could serve to wreak havoc in yields, and it's going to add unpredictability because the corn is not planted as uniformly as we are used to seeing. So we're going to have to kind of adjust our ideas here a little bit. You mix that with a big fun short position, you do have the fuel to make things pop here.
Yeah, the combination's definitely there to see a limited rally. I don't want to get folks too bullish on this, but we are in a position to see something. If we were to see something spark, Sterling, do we like December at 480, 490? I know everybody's sights are a little bit lower than they were even 2 weeks ago, but what's realistic look like in a corn rally?
Realistic looks like in a corn rally. I think right now here, let's do a little science here. Let's go ahead and do this and
While Sterling's hitting all the magic buttons and levers out there, um, one of the things that we had mentioned before, you got your. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and for lack of time here, Sterling.
Looking here, we've got 61.8 retracement of the recent move. That is our peak from 496 down to the low that we put in this morning. That gets you at about 472. Okay. Now we do have a little bit of pencil resistance up here, about 475. If we could clear that, then you're getting to that 480 number. But right now, 465, 464, and 472 is where we could expect this market to bounce unless we have a shift in the story.
Yeah.
Meaning smaller stocks, lower acres, or the weather goes bad.
And we really need all of the above to really surpass any expectations that Sterling's got up on the charts right now.
If we get all of the above, then maybe we can talk about that 490 to $5 area.
And again, our
Maybe, but
backdrop
that's
is
good.
so much different than it was a year ago. We mentioned that in the WASI report last week, but a year ago, we're looking at 600 to 700 million more bushels in stocks than where we sat. So a reduction just for simple math, just use 80 million, and it's going to be slightly more than that of harvested acres, but for 80 million, every bushel you fall on that yield, that's basically what you're subtracting. If you take a 181 bushel per acre average, you take it to 176, you're subtracting 400 million from that carryout number and supply number. That still puts us at a much greater amount than we had a year ago. So we've got to put everything in perspective here.
Yeah, this is again, to really get a market trading, we need to get that number south of 1.8. That means we're going to have to magically lose 400 million bushels of corn. That is a lot of corn.
Yeah.
That's going to take, we're going to have to, if we shave 1 million acres, million harvested acres, that'll get you 180 million. That'll get you halfway there, but you're going to have to cut the yields to make up that other half.
I think a yield cut is likely. We talked a little bit about that before, just with some of the issues we've got. We're going to have a fair amount of corn that's pollinating late in the year, maybe even as late as August this year. So there's some things that make us think that 181 might be a little high. We did a little informal survey the other day. Most people thought that number, we would come in below that. There's some great looking corn out there, but it really takes a barn burner crop wall to wall, not just in the United States, to make that happen.
And up in the Dakotas, I know with the folks I've talked to up there, there's been a lot of switching to 75-day corn in the Dakotas due to rain and whatever conditions. That, when you get that shorter duration, you're simply now not really in the ballpark to get that record yield, which I think here at some point somebody needs to sit the USDA down and have a talk with them because they've been getting it wrong. And I think that trend line yield needs to start to flatten out a little bit until we can kind of prove that we can do 180, which we have not yet been able to do.
I think that's a really good point. We have fallen short year after year after year. Really no surprises to the upside. A little bit to do with what Sterling talked about as far as planting date. That's my opinion. University data suggests, some of the cover cropping practice may take off that top end of yield. Lots of benefits that go along with that, but yields might come down because of it. So there's some reasons behind seeing that reduction, not being able to meet that threshold.
Yeah, and we have, we had narrowing furrows. We've had a lot of technological advances that got us to where we are. We need to see that next level advance to really happen, or maybe we need to cut down on acres. That would be the one way you could get to 180 is if we planted less acres and those marginal acres became set aside or found their way into another crop. We are about 9 seconds away from our release here, and see what we got here.
He went right to the stocks, everybody. No, now he's going to the acres.
Now I'm waiting for the report to drop. Is what I'm waiting for.
I thought you were highlighting what you wanted to see first, though.
Well, I am watching the markets here. The report is coming out in a slow manner because corn and soybeans have not moved at all. So we are waiting on the USDA. And this harkens back to the Bloomberg days when we had a technological issue and the report did not punch through correctly. But now we're seeing corn starting to move up here. And right now we are looking at corn up 3 to 4, beans are up 11, 12, and we're still waiting on the report here. And we're gonna switch
As you
something
do
here
that, it's
real
just
quick.
pretty amazing how technology has changed through the years. I started in an office, really pre-email. Email was kind of new, and so you waited with anticipation for the fax machine to go off. So maybe a fax machine would be faster today, Sterling.
Maybe it would be. Um, the USDA releases these reports, and then there's scrubbers that come in and pull the data. It used to be, it was done in a thing called a lockup, where the news media would actually get the reports beforehand, and they would load them up, and then they would be set to release right now. But somewhere along the line, this changed, and we have this new system which requires a lot of very adept computers. So let me check something else here and see if something came through. Remember when you had to pay for emails? Yes, Wayne, I do. Let's see here.
The
Got anything
squawk
here?
box and the fax machine.
Oh yes. Oh, the squawk box. I worked with Gordy Lynn for a long time, who was one of the more infamous squawkers, and he would, in fact, be doing those, and it was always kind of entertaining. And let's see here.
Sterling, as you look at that, have you seen any market reaction on your end?
I'm seeing corn's up 2 to 3. New crop beans are currently up about 8. So there's seems to have been some movement. And what else is going on here? Wheat, we really haven't seen much of a change. So
It's like we
there's clearly some sort of issue with the USDA in terms of getting this report
Yeah, that's
delivered.
pretty much where we were at 15 minutes ago. So
Well, here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing here a little bit. I'm going to try and work a little magic here with it kind of helps sometimes since I know people in the news media, and go.
we'll do our best to buy time here. It's like a rain delay in a baseball game. I don't
Well,
think
we
we
have
don't
plenty
want
of
to see
things to talk about.
highlights. I don't want to see highlights of the Brooks and Sterling show from the past. I think they would be pretty disappointing. We
Okay,
didn't
I
talk
am
about much
getting.
of. Okay, go ahead.
Uh, I talked to Bloomberg's newsroom, and they are telling me that the USDA website has gone down.
Perfect
So,
timing. Perfect
oh, it's
timing.
amazing how that works, isn't it? It is just
In the
amazing.
meantime, we had concentrated on corn. Let's take a look at beans for just a second. Um,
Absolutely. Here, let me.
the yield that is anticipated out there is 52 bushel per acre. Again, that would a record yield if we were to attain that. A lot of people in the little informal survey felt like there was a chance of that happening. In my backyard, soybeans don't look the greatest, maybe average at best. But I know there's a lot of places things do look pretty good. Early planting has changed the game there as well.
I haven't
So
been
what are we
out
looking at for
much, but
acres there?
just the beans around here, I'm sure, are doing just fine given the current situation. Acres on beans, we were looking for soybean acreage at 86.786, which was pretty much in line with expectations. And you can see over here, this is the number last year, 83 million. So basically, we took about 3 million, 3.5 million acres corn, turned them into soybeans.
Well,
And the variation in this is what we're going to be looking for and how that actually changes and whether that really happens. You can have weather, seed availability, farmers guessing on prices that, farmers love to plant corn, but soybeans have stable yields and sometimes have more potential upside with prices than we get other ways here. Now seeing corn down about 3 or 4 cents. September soybeans, November beans are up about 4. Wheat is down about 4 3/4. Volume seems to be picking up, but again, we are not seeing any of the reports come through here. Let me check my news wire here.
Sterling in the chat box. I believe it's Kathy that mentioned that maybe they placed the information under March as an accident and had to retract. So may have actually been out there just under a different month.
Well, here, let me jump over to another computer here. We have, if you can see here, I have my new computer set up, and we can, only the finest technology here. And let's see if I can find here.
Strategic AgriSompo Command Center there in Omaha.
Let's see here. Oh, they're not joking. I'm trying to open the prospective planting report here, and I have extremely good commercial internet in the house here, and it's not opening. Oh, hold on. Getting some
There we
numbers.
go.
We got the quarterly stocks.
Higher,
Spot 993, a little bit higher on corn.
higher.
970 on beans, a smidge higher, but nothing to get too worried
Big
about.
increase on acreage. Check out that acreage on corn.
91.427 on corn. That is a big increase. That's 1.2 million acres. So that adds about about 850 in terms of harvested acres. At 180, that adds 120 odd million to the carryout, give or take. Just doing the math on my sleeve here.
See
Wheat
what happens
stocks at
to beans.
702, a little bit higher.
Beans will
Oh
have to be
boy,
a great offset if they're there.
if they're there. And if we look at corn, here's a corn chart.
Wow.
We are down 15 and a half, and we have crushed through. There was a little bit of tentative support if you dig way, way, way back in the charts, but we have crushed through that, and clearly the only buying we can hope for right now is, and if you read yesterday's DMO, what I said about wheat, the only people who are buying wheat are people who need it, and they're not in a hurry. No one is, unless they need to cover a short and very light commercial offtake. No one's going to want to step in front of this just right now. Moving on here, we still have not got the soybean acres. Soybeans are currently up about 9 cents. So my guess is somebody thinks that we're going to see a shorter soybean number, that maybe we're going to see that number more like, oh, look at this, 86 spot 10. So while we gained about 1.4 in the corn, we only gained about 600.
Lost.
80. Actually,
Yeah.
we lost about 500 in the beans,
Yeah.
which is not maybe that big of a deal. And cotton acres noticeably firmer as well. This may very well put a sandbag on those cotton futures that have done better here of late. And now looking at the market, soybeans are up a couple cents. They were up 8 before the number dropped. So now we're only up 2 or 3. And corn is, we are down 17 to 18 cents, kind of depending on when you look. And we're still waiting on this wheat number here, which, well, maybe the wheat acres, we still have some acres to account for. And the wheat acres are actually a little bit smaller. So 47 spot 24. So we're about 400,000 under the wheat, which that might stop the selling. I don't know that's going to prompt any buying.
Big corn number, bottom line.
That is a big corn number. And now we're going to be on an even more difficult path here in terms of volatility, because one, we're going to be starting at a much lower level. If you look at July corn, it is now at 397 3/4. So we have come through the $4 level. September's at 406. So we're going to need to see obviously some weather issues, because this report is doubly bearish for corn. We saw additional acres and bigger stocks than what we had expected. Also, the previous stocks numbers were revised a little bit higher. So again, we need something to create some sort of bullish spark here, simply because the math of the situation is rather difficult at the moment.
Well, it will be interesting to see how, as often is the case with these big reports, we see that knee-jerk reaction. Maybe get a little bit of a correction by the close. We'll see what happens today. There are some
Yep.
factors out there to allow that to happen. How's the market trading right now, Sterling? Any change from that big
Right now, December
sell-off?
corn is at 420. The low of the day is 415 and 3/4. So we have managed to come off that low. If we could manage to finish, oh, let's see, we're call it 420. If we could put another dime into this and finish at 430, that might ease the situation a little bit. Um, it's going to be hard to see people coming in here and trying to sell this in the hole like this. This is not a spot where, gee, it was $5 and I had a chance to sell it. I'm selling it at 419 is a good way to get hurt.
Yeah.
That is the one of the few bullish things that we actually have going on for this right now. As this moves on, maybe we can see some better export demand due to lower prices. And one thing that is contradictory here, and we haven't talked about this yet, are the Chinese corn futures, which did trade at a 7-month high yesterday. Okay. The corn crop in China is having a problem. So perhaps these low prices will attract some Chinese buying. Whether they actually take the corn remains to be seen, but that is a potential issue. We're seeing fairly firm hog prices, and I know the Chinese government wants to grow the economy, so bringing in more grain, lowering food prices, and hogs are a big part of that. That is something that can happen, but again, we have a lot of moving parts. Corn now trading at 421 and a half. That's down 12 and 3/4. And soybeans are at soybeans are making a recovery here. We're at 11.12 and they're up now 7 1/4 on November beans. So we are doing a little better with the beans.
Well, um, given that corn number, that's a surprise. That's an industry surprise. And given
Yeah.
that number, I would say where we're at is actually an optimistic sign. I know it's
It,
red. Nobody wants
it,
to see that, but given that number, it's optimistic.
and again, if corn's going to rally, it's going to need help from its friends, and that friend would be the soybeans.
Well, Sterling,
And perhaps a
with
soybean meal if we can see good, the continued export improvements.
we had an anticlimactic meeting here with a little bit of delay, a few fireworks later. Any final thoughts for the crew as we sign off?
Well, crude oil is moving higher, and that is supportive. Again, I know it's hard to be optimistic when every piece of hard news about a product is bearish, but there are some outside things, and when we get past the hangover of this report, things can improve.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as always, thanks for tuning in and watching with us today. We'll be back for a WASD report right around the corner. Sterling will be gone, but we'll do our best to hold down the fort. And I wish we were into this report all in the green, but hey, we've got some soybean action in the green, and I guess that's all we can ask for today, Sterling.
That is pretty much about the best given these numbers. If we can keep the soybeans closing positive, that will help keep a floor underneath the corn. If those beans start to have a problem, though, I would not want to get in the way of the corn market on the downside just yet. This is also these lower grain prices will eventually be supportive towards feeder cattle. We do have some potential upside in the cattle, and we do have some fairly well-defined bottoming action going on in the hogs as we are coming into BLT season. So,
All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll catch you next time around.
thank you.